Lincoln Riley has not been successful at USC so far, but I am convinced that the moves he has made in 2025 so far are national championship, blue blood, elite program, caliber moves. They're incredible. I think that Riley and his staff and his program in the athletic department know that the time to win is now. They finished 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten, 9th overall in the conference. They won the Las Vegas Bowl. They went 2-0 against the SEC, and yet lost to Maryland. So that should tell you, to a certain degree, like just how confusing everything was, like how inconsistent that team was. It truly was, honestly, remarkable. Like I can pull up their schedule here. I'm going to do that on my second computer because it's insane. I mean, they beat LSU. They lost to Michigan on the road, lost to Minnesota on the road, took Penn State to overtime, and outgained USC in total yards at home, two top 5 teams at the end of the year. But they lost to Maryland, lost to Washington, almost lost to UCLA, and only beat Nebraska by a score. They were a very inconsistent team. And I think a lot of that had to do with travel. You know, you're going 3 time zones over to play Minnesota. You're going 4 time zones over to play Michigan. 4, and you're going from coast to coast to play Maryland. You're going from, the southernmost point of the West Coast to the northernmost point of the West Coast to play Washington. UCLA, it's, across town, but it's a dead environment. Players aren't going to be hyped to play at UCLA, and it's a rivalry game. So that, I think, played a part in the struggles. Same with Grinch getting 2 years to ruin the defense, and same with NIL and recruiting not being where they should be at USC. But now, I look at the Trojans. I look at their hiring of Trumain Carroll at strength and conditioning coach. I look at him bringing over his assistant from Kansas State. I look at Lincoln Riley finally moving on from Bennie Wylie in the same way he finally moved on from Alex Grinch. I look at D'Anton Lynn in year 2. I look at Rob Ryan at linebacker coach. I look at what Riley has emphasized in recruiting and development and focus, high school-wise, portal-wise, and just how he wants his team to be a Big Ten team. And I can't help but feel good. I can't help but feel that. I think that USC is in a really good position right now. A position that I think is quite frankly one to compete in the college football playoff for years to come, to compete for national championships potentially. I mean, you look at USC, the recruiting class right now, just the information and the 2025 moves, they're on the screen right now. You can see them. You can pause the video and read them. They have 27 commits right now for the 2026 class. Their goal, Chad Bowen's goal, is 35 to 40 commits. Their average rank per commit, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, is a 92.16. They have 2 5-stars and 12 4-stars. They actually just got a 4-star commit today, so make that 13. It's crazy, really is. And then they have a 5-star offensive tackle in Kenyai Pepe, 4-star running back in Deshaun Redo, a 4-star wide receiver in Trent Mosley, who are some key players on offense, and then key players on defense. Look at this. They're actually recruiting on defense, and they've been developing there, and I think last year's USC team was the epitome of that. They more than halved their placement in ESPN's defensive efficiency ratings from 2023, where it was outside the top 100, I believe, to 2024. Xavier Griffin, linebacker, 5-star from Georgia. RJ Sermons, 4-star corner. A 4-star defensive tackle, Samote Kadonganga. Sorry if I butchered his name. And then 4-star corner, Elbert Hill, who's from Ohio. Ohio's traditionally been, if you're in Ohio, you only go to Ohio State. Ohio State, made kind of a late pitch to him, and USC got him. It's just, they are lighting the college football world on fire in recruiting. And this is not just a good thing for USC in terms of their leveling up. It's a good thing for them in that when you get 35 to 40 commits and you're going after a lot of blue chippers, you're taking away from other programs. You're taking away from other competitor programs. You just are. Like, there are going to be players that Georgia or Texas or Ohio State or Oregon wanted that USC either currently has or they now have. And they'll have to go elsewhere to get them. Maybe they'll find a quality replacement for who they originally wanted, or maybe it'll be a downgrade. Who knows? But it benefits USC. They're getting the recognition that they need. They're getting the advertisement they need. They have the proper energy. And I think more importantly, they're putting together a good staff, because energy and hype are useless and sometimes can be based on some guy making a tweet that sounds like it makes sense and contains good analysis, but actually doesn't. The potential class impact here is that the higher quality players are on defense. A lot of these players, the majority of them, especially the blue chippers, are on defense. That's been USC's weakness. And they're still recruiting well on the offensive side of the ball. So this recruiting class is making strides. It's one of the better classes in the nation. It's the best class right now in terms of overall rank. It's the best class right now there. And in terms of quality, they are only behind Ohio State, Texas A&M, LSU, Georgia, Oregon. Just looking, they're ahead of Tennessee, and they're behind Alabama. That's it. That's it, right there. Not much. So they're getting quality. They're definitely getting quantity, and I think that Bowen right now is one of the best general managers in college football. He is USC close to their recruiting and program potential in terms of what you can see in a preseason. Bennie Wylie being fired, I think, was very important because I never had him as one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the Big Ten. In fact, I had him at one point as the worst strength and conditioning coach in the Big Ten. Thought they were more physical last season, but not nearly physical enough. And I think Riley decided, it's time to go a different direction. Trumain Carroll being hired, or maybe it's Trumain Carroll, has been elite at Kansas State, where I think Kansas State has been the best or one of the best conditioned teams in the Big 12, alongside of, Utah, I would say. And he's bringing in a second command as well. So you're gonna have some continuity, but in the strength and conditioning room under the new, CEO there. Riley, I think, recognizes that now is time to win. That's why he fired Wylie. That's why he brought in Chad Bowen and Trumain Carroll. And then when you look at what he brought in last year on defense in Eric Henderson, Doug Belk, D'Anton Lynn, Matt Entz, who left and has been replaced by Rob Ryan. And then he hired another coach, I think a corners coach from UCF this past season, who coincidentally also brought Chasen Johnson, a pretty good corner from the Knights, to play for the Trojans. Many of those moves in 2024 are now in their second year. Lynn's a genius. He's going to have that team punching above its weight class on defense like he did last year, except to an even better degree, because now they'll have better strength and conditioning, even if it's for only a tiny bit. I think it'll have an impact, and they'll know his scheme and his system better. And his position coaches are going to do a good job developing, because I think they did last season. So USC right now is poised to ultimately take steps forward. They really are. And I think that when you look at this team, the questions are not, do they have the talent or can they win at the high level? The questions are, can the off-field energy translate to on the field? Can they play with their head on fire? Will Riley's offense regress to the mean? Not in a negative way, but in the sense that last year was his worst offense he's ever had. So will it regress to the mean in the sense that it will get back to more of his typical offense, a top 10 offense, maybe at the worst, top 15, could even be top 5? Will it do that? I think that the team's ceiling, depth, and identity are concerns for USC. I don't think any position is an obvious concern, though, because I think they have good potential at all of them. It's just whether or not I'm correctly identifying the potential in those rooms and whether or not they're properly developed by the staff. They could have limitations at QB, tight end, O-line, and D-line, but those rooms could also be pretty good and improvements over last season. I think that running back, wide receiver, D-end, linebacker, safety, and the defensive staff are obvious strengths. I mean, bring back Kamari Ramsey and Eric Gentry was huge. I think that Anthony Lucas and Cameron Fountain will make a pretty good duo at D-end. And Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane are, let's face it, some of the best wide receivers in the country. And I think their running back room is deep. They got, a JUCO guy in Waymon Parker. They have Brian Jackson, who, was a star in the bowl game. And they have, I forget his name, don't have the list in front of me. They're probably a transfer from New Mexico who averaged over 6 yards per carry. That, along with Maava, who last year had a 133.8 passer rating, 11 touchdowns, 6 picks, at 1,201 passing yards, and on the ground had 45 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. Him in a full preseason where he's being viewed as the starter, I think will benefit him tremendously. And when you look at this incoming class, transfers and high school recruiting, the average rank per commit is an 88.93 with 40 commits. So they're bringing in bodies. That's because USC lost a lot to the portal and also to the NFL and running out of eligibility. They have a 5-star coming in Husson Longstreet. They have Jakeem Stewart, who's close to a 5-star at defensive tackle. They have 13 4-stars, 26 3-stars. And when you look at their win total, 7.5 plus 3,500 to win the Big Ten, plus 12,000 to win it all. Their most likely record is 8-4 at minus 118 odds, and then their second most likely record 7-5 at minus 104. Either of those would be an improvement. The schedule's easier than last year, so ideally you want like at least a 2-game improvement, if not a 3-game improvement. I think 7-5 would be disappointing with this schedule, but still it's juice to the over. The expectation is 8-4. I think for SC fans it's probably 8-4, 9-3, or even 10-2 with the schedule you look at. I mean, Week 1 against Missouri State should be a win. Week 2 against Georgia Southern, be careful. It's Clay Helton. They will be motivated to take down USC in that game, but still should be a win. At Purdue in Week 3 should be a win. And that is, that's the furthest they'll have to travel all season long is at Purdue or at Notre Dame. So there's no game at Maryland. There's not even a game as long of a distance to travel as at Michigan. And there won't be a game you'll be traveling to that will probably be as cold as Minnesota. So the traveling really pans out to USC's benefit, I would say, this year, as much as you could, given that they're playing in a conference where 14 of the 18 teams are in a different time zone, and 15 of the 18 teams are in a state that doesn't border their own in California. Then you host Michigan State in Week 4, travel to Illinois in Week 5. You get a bye in Week 6 before playing Michigan in one of the biggest games of the year for USC in Week 7. Week 8, you travel to Notre Dame. Good. I think it's good that those two games, which are perhaps the biggest games outside of the Oregon game later in the year, that they're in between those byes. That allows USC to exclusively prep for those two teams and sell out for them, and then they can rest in Week 9. Week 10, they travel to Nebraska. Week 11, they host Northwestern. Week 12, they host Iowa. They play at Oregon Week 13 and host UCLA Week 14. They will be favored in at least 8 of these games, potentially 9. I mean, they'll probably be favored unless they're really underperforming and Illinois is overperforming in their first 4 games. They'll probably be favored at Illinois. All the games before that, they'll be favored. Whether they'll be favored or not versus Michigan, I think is yet to be decided, but I would say that's going to be, a minus 3.5 for either team or somewhere in between that. So let's just say it's like a half game. Notre Dame, they'll be an underdog. Nebraska, I would say USC would probably be a slight favorite, but I don't know. So let's call that a half game. Northwestern and Iowa, they'd be favorites. UCLA, they'd be a favorite. Oregon, a definitive underdog. They'll be favored in 9 of their games, underdogs in 3, including the 2 half games. So They should go 8-4, 9-3, and I think they have the potential to do better than that. If USC plays the majority of their cards correctly, you're talking about a college football playoff team. They almost beat Notre Dame last year. If they started Maava from day one, he probably doesn't throw those picks, and they may have won, even though Notre Dame ran for 1,000 yards on them. Michigan almost beat them last year. Michigan has to now travel to the Coliseum instead of USC traveling to the Big House. That's probably a full touchdown swing when you consider the travel. And yeah, I mean, USC is a bye and Michigan isn't coming off of a bye. You look at Oregon. Oregon's losing about as much as USC is, except Oregon was a pretty good team last year. USC was underperforming. So there's a chance those two teams could converge. And then Illinois is not a great team in terms of point spread. We'll see if that changes this year or not. And while USC has to travel to Nebraska, USC clearly last year was the much better team than Nebraska. USC, because of Maava's nature, just, I think, made more mistakes, or at least more costly mistakes in the pick six, for example. So this team, they're not high in odds to win the Big Ten or the Natty, and their win total isn't high, I know, but they'll be better than last year. In 2026, much like a lot of teams I've talked about, they should be all in, especially there in terms of having finally the potential to win it all. And who knows, they could reach the playoff this year. I mean, pay attention. I'm telling you, D'Anton Lynn, with his, Ravens-style defense, he has better players than ever at USC to run it. He's in the second year of his scheme. We've seen Jim Knowles. We've seen Jesse Minter. We've seen even Tosh Lupoy, even with some of his failings. And other defensive coordinators, Manny Diaz, for example, all take pretty sizable leaps. Oh, Joe Rossi from 2018 when he was the interim to 2019 when he was finally the full-timer, all take pretty sizable leaps. So in a conference with great D coordinators, and Lynn being one of the best, this defense should take another step forward. That's really my thoughts on USC right there, is the time to win is now. It's not even next year. I mean, that might be the time to win the Big Ten or compete for a Natty, or maybe that's 2 years down the line. But the time to win in the sense of be in the playoff conversation in November or at least October, make Oregon bleed, beat one of Oregon, USC, or Michigan, or if you don't beat any of them, at least beat everyone else, show consistency. The time to rise up, if you are a USC Trojan, if you are the Trojans, is now. I think Riley understands this. I think that the staff he has built is capable of doing it, and I will actually go a step further and say that I think they will do it in 2025. They're going to go over their preseason win total. They're going to win 8 games or more. That's on the record right here at College Football with Sam.